The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 a.m., the same way it had for the past 9 years. Rosa Diaz groaned and reached out to silence it before it woke up her daughter in the next room. Her body ached from yesterday's work, but she swung her legs over the side of the bed anyway. No time for 5 more minutes. Not when you're a single mom with bills piling higher than the dirty laundry in the corner. The small 2-bedroom apartment was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator. Rosa moved carefully through the darkness, avoiding the creaky floorboard near Lucia's room. Her daughter needed all the sleep she could get. The girl had been up late studying again, determined to keep her perfect GPA. In the bathroom, Rosa splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection. At 43, the lines around her eyes had deepened, and strands of gray now appeared in her once jet-black hair. She pulled it back into a tight bun, put on her blue uniform with Westfield High maintenance staff stitched above the pocket, and headed to the kitchen. Rosa packed a lunch for Lucia, a sandwich, an apple, and the last granola bar from the box. She'd skipped lunch herself today. The electric bill had come in higher than expected, and groceries would have to wait until payday. She scribbled a note on the fridge whiteboard. Good luck on your chemistry test. Dinner at 7, love you lots. The morning air was crisp as Rosa walked to the bus stop. Her car had broken down 3 months ago, and repairs were still a distant dream. The city was just waking up, streetlights flickering off, early joggers nodding hello, delivery trucks rumbling past. Rosa liked this quiet time when she could think and plan, and sometimes when she allowed herself dream a little. The bus arrived at 5:15, right on schedule. Rosa nodded to the driver, Tom, who had been driving this route since she started at Westfield High. They had a comfortable silence between them, 2 people who understood what it meant to work while the world slept. Cold one today, Tom said as she dropped her fare into the box. Winter's coming early this year, Rosa replied, settling into her usual seat behind him. How's that smart kid of yours doing? Rosa couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. She got another acceptance letter yesterday. Stanford University, Tom whistled low. Fancy full ride? The smile dimmed slightly. Partial scholarship. Still need to come up with about $20,000 for the first year. Tom shook his head sympathetically as he pulled away from the curb. You'll figure it out. You always do. Rosa nodded, but the worry that had become her constant companion settled deeper in her stomach. $20,000 might as well be $20 million. Even with her savings, the extra cleaning jobs on weekends, and selling homemade tamales at the community center, they were nowhere near the amount needed. And the deadline for the deposit was just 2 months away. Westfield High School loomed ahead, a massive brick building with columns at the entrance. During the day, it buzzed with the energy of 2,000 teenagers. But at this hour, it stood silent and empty, waiting for Rosa and the other early staff to bring it to life. Rosa unlocked the side entrance and signed in at the security desk. The night guard, Pete, was finishing his shift, gathering his things and yawning. Morning, Rosa, left you a mess in the gym. Some basketball practice ran late, and those boys don't know what a trash can is. Rosa nodded. I'll start there. Oh, and Mr. Reynolds wants the auditorium spotless by noon. Some big-shot alumni is visiting today. Another special cleaning request. There was always something. Rosa checked her watch. She had 7 hours before the end of her shift to clean the gym, the auditorium, and complete her regular duties. It would be tight, but she'd make it work. She always did. The gym smelled of sweat and rubber, with candy wrappers and empty water bottles scattered under the bleachers. Rosa worked methodically, starting from one corner and moving across the vast space. As she cleaned, her mind wandered to Lucia's college situation. Her daughter had worked so hard. Straight A's, volunteer work at the hospital, science fair awards. Stanford had been her dream school since she was 12. When a university representative had visited their middle school, Mom, they have the best biology program in the country, Lucia had gushed that day, eyes shining. I could learn how to cure diseases there. Rosa had nodded, encouraging the dream while silently calculating the impossible numbers. But somehow, against all odds, Lucia had done it. She'd gotten in. And now the only thing standing in her way was money. The irony wasn't lost on Rosa. She had crossed the border 25 years ago for a better life, worked cleaning jobs and waited tables and saved every penny, so her daughter could have opportunities she never had, and Lucia had seized those opportunities with both hands. Now they were so close. Rosa moved to the auditorium next. The large space with its rows of red velvet seats and imposing stage always made her feel small. She started at the back, working her way forward, vacuuming between rows and picking up forgotten programs from last week's drama club performance. As she approached the stage, she paused. The grand piano sat there, lid closed, waiting for the next performance. Rosa looked around. She was completely alone. The custodian supervisor wouldn't arrive for another hour, and the teachers usually didn't show up until after 7:30. She set down her cleaning supplies and walked slowly up the side stairs to the stage. The piano seemed to call to her, a beautiful instrument she only ever touched when dusting its polished surface. Rosa's fingers itched. It had been so long. Before Lucia, before the move to America, before life had become an endless cycle of work and worry, Rosa had played. Not professionally, her family could never afford lessons, but she had natural talent. A kind neighbor in her hometown had taught her the basics, and Rosa had practiced on an old upright piano at her church whenever she could sneak away. For years, music had been her escape, her joy, her secret dream. She sat down on the bench and lifted the lid. The keys gleamed in the dim light of the auditorium, perfect white and black rectangles waiting to be brought to life. Rosa placed her hands in position, muscle memory from years ago guiding her fingers to a C major chord. She didn't press down. It felt wrong somehow, as if she was trespassing. This piano wasn't meant for the cleaning lady. It was for the music students, the performers, people with proper training, not for someone like her. Rosa closed the lid gently and stood up. Dreams were for people who could afford them. She had more practical concerns, like figuring out how to come up with $20,000 in 2 months. Back to her cart, back to the cleaning. She finished the auditorium and moved on to the classrooms. By 7:30, the school was beginning to wake up. Teachers arrived with coffee cups and sleepy smiles, nodding to Rosa as they passed. Some knew her name, others didn't. She was part of the background for most of them, one of the invisible people who kept the school running. As she cleaned the science lab, Rosa paused by the wall of college pennants. Stanford's red flag hung prominently in the center. Beneath it was a photo of last year's valedictorian standing proudly in front of the university gates. That could be Lucia next year, if only. Ms. Diaz. Rosa turned to see Mr. Chen, the AP chemistry teacher, watching her with a curious expression. "Sorry," she said quickly, returning to wiping down the lab tables. "I'll be finished soon." "No rush," he said, setting his briefcase down. "I wanted to talk to you about Lucia. She showed me her acceptance letter yesterday. Stanford is very impressive." Rosa nodded, pride momentarily overwhelming her worry. "She has worked very hard." She mentioned there might be financial concerns. Rosa stiffened. She didn't like discussing money problems, especially not with the teachers. "We will manage," she said firmly. Mr. Chen nodded. "I'm sure you will. But I wanted you to know that I've recommended Lucia for the Wilson Science Foundation Scholarship. It's competitive, but with her grades and research project, she has a good chance. It would cover $5,000 per year. 5,000. A quarter of what they needed. It wasn't enough, but it was something. "Thank you," Rosa said sincerely. "Lucia is special," Mr. Chen continued. "I've taught for 22 years, and I've rarely seen a student with her combination of intelligence and determination." He paused. "She gets that from you, I think." Rosa felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected compliment. "I didn't finish high school," she admitted. "But education was always important in my family. Well, you've done an extraordinary job raising her." Mr. Chen smiled and turned to set up for his first class. As Rosa finished cleaning and pushed her cart into the hallway, she felt a small flicker of hope. 5,000 from the scholarship, 7,000 from their savings, maybe another 3 from the weekend jobs. They were still short, but getting closer. The PA system crackled to life with morning announcements. Rosa listened with half an ear as she restocked paper towels in the bathroom. Then a name caught her attention. "And we're honored to welcome back distinguished alumnus Edward Blackwell, the Grammy-winning music producer and philanthropist, who will be visiting today to discuss the upcoming benefit concert for our arts program. There will be a special assembly in the auditorium at noon." The famous music producer was the VIP visitor. No wonder Mr. Reynolds wanted the auditorium spotless. Rosa hurried to finish her morning tasks. She had cleaning to do in the East Wing before noon, but something pulled her back toward the auditorium. Maybe she could catch a glimpse of this famous person, someone who had made a career in music. living the kind of life she had once dreamed about. As Rosa pushed her cart down the empty hallway, she heard piano music floating from the direction of the auditorium. Someone was playing Chopin, the Nocturne in E-flat major, her favorite piece. Without thinking, Rosa followed the sound, drawn like a sailor to a siren's call. The music grew louder as she approached the auditorium doors. She hesitated, then quietly pushed one door open and peeked inside. A man sat at the grand piano on stage, his silver hair catching the spotlight. His hands moved gracefully over the keys, bringing forth the beautiful melody that had once been Rosa's comfort and joy. She stood transfixed, letting the music wash over her, remembering a different life, a different Rosa. The piece ended, and in the silence that followed, Rosa realized she had tears on her cheeks. She wiped them quickly and started to back away. But as she turned, her cleaning cart bumped against the door with a loud rattle. The man at the piano looked up. "I'm sorry," Rosa called out, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll come back later to clean." But the man was already standing, peering out into the darkened auditorium. "No, please come in," he called in a friendly voice. "I'm just killing time before my meeting with the principal." Rosa hesitated, then slowly walked down the aisle, pushing her cart. As she got closer, she could see that the silver-haired man was probably in his 60s, with kind eyes and an expensive-looking suit. "You must be from the maintenance staff," he said, noting her uniform. "Yes, sir. I'm supposed to clean the auditorium for your visit, but I can come back later." The man waved his hand dismissively. "It looks perfectly clean to me." "I'm Edward Blackwell," he added, extending his hand. Rosa quickly wiped her palm on her uniform before shaking his hand. "Rosa Diaz, did you enjoy the music, Rosa?" "I saw you listening." Rosa nodded, suddenly shy. "Chopin is my favorite." Edward's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You know Chopin?" Before Rosa could respond, the side door opened and Principal Reynolds hurried in, looking flustered. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. I see you've met our Rosa." And just like that, the moment was gone. Rosa was once again invisible. Just the cleaning lady who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. "I'll finish up later," she murmured, turning to leave. But as she pushed her cart back up the aisle, she heard Edward Blackwell's voice behind her. "Rosa," he called. "It was a pleasure. Perhaps we'll talk more about Chopin another time." She glanced back and nodded, a small smile crossing her face. Then she was back in the hallway, back to her routine, back to reality. But something had shifted. As she continued her morning tasks, the music stayed with her, playing in her mind like a half-remembered dream. And for the first time in years, Rosa found herself wondering, what if? The rest of Rosa's morning passed in a blur. She cleaned the science labs, wiped down lockers, and mopped the cafeteria floors, all while Chopin's Nocturne played on repeat in her head. Occasionally, she would pause, remembering the silver-haired man at the piano. Edward Blackwell, a famous music producer who somehow knew her name now. "Rosa, you're daydreaming again," called out Hector, the head custodian, as he passed her in the hallway. "Reynolds wants all hands on deck for lunch cleanup today. That VIP is eating with the school board in the teacher's lounge." Rosa nodded, snapping back to reality. "I'll be there." The lunch period was always chaotic. Hundreds of teenagers talking, laughing, spilling food, and leaving messes in their wake. Today was no different. Rosa moved efficiently between tables, wiping surfaces and emptying trash cans. She spotted Lucia across the cafeteria, sitting with her friends from the science club. Her daughter was animated, hands moving as she explained something, probably related to her latest lab experiment. Lucia caught her eye and waved. Rosa waved back, a small gesture of connection in their separate worlds. Sometimes it amazed her how different their lives were, even under the same roof. While Rosa cleaned floors and scrubbed toilets, Lucia solved equations and won science competitions. It was exactly what Rosa had worked for, a better life for her child, but sometimes the distance between them felt vast. After lunch, Rosa headed to the teacher's lounge to help with the special cleanup. She pushed her cart through the door and froze. Sitting at the table with Principal Reynolds and 3 school board members was Edward Blackwell. They were finishing lunch, coffee cups, and half-eaten desserts on their plates. "Ah, Rosa," Principal Reynolds said, noticing her. "We're just about finished here." Rosa nodded and backed up, planning to return later, but Edward Blackwell was already standing. "Actually, I was hoping to speak with Ms. Diaz, he said smoothly. If you wouldn't mind giving us the room for a moment? Principal Reynolds looked surprised but quickly masked it. Of course, of course. We'll continue our discussion in my office. This way, everyone. The administrators filed out, giving curious glances back at Rosa and the famous visitor. When the door closed, Edward gestured to a chair. Please, sit down. Rosa hesitated, then perched nervously on the edge of the chair, still wearing her rubber gloves and apron. Our conversation was interrupted earlier, Edward said, sitting across from her. You mentioned you like Chopin? Rosa nodded, unsure where this was going. I used to play a long time ago. Just for myself, nothing serious. Edward's eyes lit up with interest. What else did you play? Bach, some Mozart. Beethoven was too difficult for me, but I tried. Rosa smiled at the memory. I never had proper lessons. A neighbor taught me the basics when I was a girl in Mexico, and I practiced whenever I could find a piano. Self-taught musicians often have the most interesting interpretations, Edward remarked. They play from the heart, not just from technique. Rosa shrugged, embarrassed by his attention. It was just a hobby. Music is never just a hobby, Edward said firmly. It's a conversation with the soul. He paused, studying her face. Do you still play? No, Rosa admitted. Not for many years. Life got busy. Life has a way of doing that. Edward nodded thoughtfully. I saw a young woman wave to you in the cafeteria. Your daughter? Yes, Lucia. Rosa couldn't help the pride that crept into her voice. She's a senior this year. She looks like you. Same eyes, Rosa smiled, but much smarter. She's going to college next year, Stanford University. Edward's eyebrows rose. Impressive. That's a top school. She wants to study biology, maybe become a doctor someday. Rosa's smile faded slightly. If we can figure out how to pay for it. Ah. Edward nodded with understanding. Not cheap, Stanford. Rosa straightened her shoulders. She hadn't meant to mention their financial problems. It wasn't this stranger's concern, no matter how famous he was. We'll manage, she said firmly. The same thing she had told Mr. Chen earlier. Edward seemed to sense her discomfort and changed the subject. I'm here to organize a benefit concert for the school's arts program. Apparently it's been underfunded for years. They cut the piano lessons 3 years ago, Rosa said before she could stop herself. And the orchestra program is half what it used to be. You've been here a while then? 9 years. Edward nodded thoughtfully. Would you consider playing at the benefit concert? Rosa stared at him, certain she had misheard. Me? Yes, you. A piece of your choosing. Chopin, perhaps? Rosa laughed nervously. You're joking. I rarely joke about music. Edward's expression was serious. I have a good ear for talent, Ms. Diaz. It's how I've built my career. And something tells me you have talent. Rosa shook her head firmly. I haven't touched a piano in years. And I'm not a performer. She gestured to her uniform. Just what? A human being with the capacity to create beauty? Edward leaned forward. Do you know why I came back to this school, Ms. Diaz? Because this is where I got my start. Right here in that auditorium. I was a poor kid with no connections. But my music teacher heard something in me and pushed me to apply for a scholarship that changed my life. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Think about it. The concert is in 6 weeks. Plenty of time to practice. Rosa didn't take the card. This is crazy. Edward stood up, straightening his expensive suit. Sometimes the craziest opportunities are the ones most worth taking. He smiled at her stunned expression. I'll be back next week to check on the concert preparations. We can talk more then. He walked to the door, then turned back with a sudden grin that transformed his serious face. Tell you what, Rosa, play one note for me, just one, and I'll donate $10,000 to the school's arts program. Rosa's mouth fell open. $10,000? For one note? Why not? I'm an eccentric millionaire, aren't I? That's what people expect. His eyes twinkled with mischief. Next week, then. One note, $10,000. And with that, he was gone, leaving Rosa alone in the teacher's lounge, staring at the business card on the table. Edward Blackwell, CEO, Blackwell Music Group. A direct phone number was printed beneath his name. Rosa finally picked up the card, tucking it into her pocket with shaking hands. This was absurd. He couldn't be serious. And even if he was, she couldn't possibly perform at a benefit concert. What would people think? The cleaning lady pretending to be a musician? She stood up and went back to her cart, pulling out supplies to clean the room. As she worked, she tried to push the conversation from her mind, but the offer kept repeating itself. One note, $10,000. And beyond that, the invitation to play at the concert. The afternoon dragged on. Rosa found herself moving through her tasks mechanically, her mind elsewhere. As she was emptying trash cans in the music room, she paused by the upright piano used for student lessons. The room was empty, everyone at the assembly in the auditorium. Almost without thinking, Rosa set down her trash bag and sat at the piano bench. She removed her rubber gloves and placed her hands on the keys, not pressing down, just feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingers. Then slowly she played a single note, middle C. The sound hung in the air, clear and perfect. One note, $10,000. But it wasn't about the money, was it? It was about something that had been buried for so long. She had almost forgotten it existed. The joy of music, the dream she had set aside. Mom? Rosa jumped up from the bench, turning to see Lucia standing in the doorway looking confused. What are you doing? Just cleaning, Rosa said quickly, reaching for her gloves. Lucia tilted her head, studying her mother with curious eyes. Were you playing the piano? Rosa hesitated, then nodded. Just one note. I didn't know you could play. There's a lot you don't know about me, Rosa said with a small smile. I had a life before I became your mom, you know. Lucia came into the room, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Like what? Rosa hesitated. She had never talked much about her past with Lucia. It had always seemed irrelevant, even painful sometimes. The struggles, the dreams that never came to fruition. Why burden her daughter with that? But looking at Lucia now, nearly grown and preparing to leave for college, Rosa suddenly wanted her to know. I used to play in Mexico when I was younger than you are now. Nothing formal, but I loved it. Why did you stop? Rosa shrugged. Life happened. I came to America. I had you. There was never enough time or money for music lessons. Lucia sat down on the piano bench, looking up at her mother with new eyes. Will you play something for me? Rosa shook her head. I haven't played in 20 years, Mija. I've forgotten everything. I don't believe that, Lucia said stubbornly. Some things you don't forget. Like riding a bike or... She gestured to the piano. Rosa sighed and sat beside her daughter on the bench. One song maybe I remember, but I'll be very rusty. She positioned her hands and began to play the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece she had heard Edward playing that morning. The first few notes were hesitant, uncertain. But then muscle memory took over and the melody began to flow. It wasn't perfect. She missed notes here and there, and her timing was off. But the essence of the piece remained. When she finished, Rosa looked up to see Lucia staring at her, mouth open in shock. Mom, that was beautiful. Why didn't you ever tell me you could play like that? Rosa shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. It never seemed important. Not important. Mom, you have real talent. Had, Rosa corrected. And it doesn't matter now. What matters is your future, your college. Lucia frowned. Is that why you never told me? Because you gave up music for me? I gave up nothing, Rosa said firmly, taking her daughter's hand. I gained everything. You are my greatest joy, Lucia. Never doubt that. Lucia squeezed her hand, but there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. You know, Stanford has an amazing music program, too. The library has practice rooms with pianos that anyone can use. Rosa smiled and stood up, reaching for her cleaning supplies. I'm a little old to be thinking about new careers, Mija. You're only 43. That's not old. Old enough to know my place in the world, Rosa said gently. Now go back to class. I have work to finish. Lucia gathered her backpack but paused at the door. That man who visited today, the music producer? I heard he talked to you. Rosa froze. News travels fast. It's high school, Mom. Everything is gossip. Lucia grinned. What did he want? Rosa hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. He's organizing a benefit concert for the school's arts program. We just talked about that. Cool. Lucia seemed to accept this explanation. I'll see you at home. Don't forget, I'm making dinner tonight. It's your night off. I remember. Be careful with the stove. After Lucia left, Rosa stood in the empty music room thinking about the strange turn her day had taken. Edward Blackwell's business card seemed to burn in her pocket. One note, $10,000. The benefit concert invitation. It was absurd. Impossible. She had responsibilities, a job, a daughter to put through college. She didn't have time for childhood dreams. And yet. As Rosa pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, she found herself humming the Chopin Nocturne, her fingers twitching at her sides as if playing invisible keys. For the first time in years, something long dormant was awakening inside her, something that felt dangerously like hope. The week after Edward Blackwell's visit seemed to crawl by. Rosa found herself distracted, making small mistakes in her cleaning routine that she never would have made before. Twice Hector had to remind her about tasks she'd forgotten. Her mind kept wandering back to the piano, to the offer, to possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider in decades. Every time she passed the music room or the auditorium, she felt a pull, like a magnet drawing her toward the pianos inside. Once, during her lunch break, she even snuck into the empty music room and played a few scales just to see if her fingers still remembered. They did, though they were stiff and awkward from years of cleaning rather than playing. At home, things were different too. After discovering her mother's hidden talent, Lucia had been full of questions about Rosa's past. What else had she given up? What other dreams had she set aside? Rosa tried to deflect, uncomfortable with this new scrutiny, but Lucia was persistent. "You never talk about your life before me," Lucia said one evening as they washed dishes together. "I want to know who you were." Rosa handed her a plate to dry. "I was just a girl from a small town who wanted more than what was available there. Nothing special. And the piano? How did that start?" Rosa smiled, remembering. "Our church had an old upright piano that no one played anymore. The keys were yellowed and some of them stuck, but to me it was magical. I would sneak in when the church was empty and teach myself little songs I had heard on the radio. Without lessons? How? By ear at first. Then Mrs. Flores, she lived next door to us, saw me playing one day. She had been a music teacher before she retired. She started giving me informal lessons whenever she had time. So you were good?" Rosa shrugged. "I had some natural ability," she said. "But many people do." "Not like what I heard," Lucia insisted. "Mom, you could have been a professional." Rosa laughed. "Now you're exaggerating. Besides, that life wasn't for someone like me. Someone like you. A poor girl from Mexico with no connections, no money for proper training." Rosa shook her head. "Music as a career is for people with privilege, like Mr. Blackwell." Rosa paused, plate in hand. "What do you mean?" "I looked him up. He grew up poor too, right here in this city. No connections either until a teacher helped him get a scholarship to Juilliard." Rosa frowned. "You've been researching him?" Lucia looked slightly guilty. "I was curious after you mentioned the benefit concert. He's kind of a big deal, Mom. 5 Grammy Awards, worked with all the top artists, and he specifically talked to you." "It wasn't a big deal," Rosa said, though the memory of their conversation and his offer had been replaying in her mind all week. What did he really want? Lucia pressed. "People are talking about it at school," Rosa sighed. He asked me to play at the benefit concert." Lucia's eyes widened. "Seriously? That's amazing. What did you say?" "I said no, of course." Rosa turned back to the dishes. "It was a crazy idea." "Why is it crazy?" "You're talented." "I'm a janitor, Lucia, not a performer. You could be both." Lucia took her mother's wet, soapy hands. "Mom, this could be a chance to do something for yourself for once. Something you love." Rosa pulled her hands away gently. "My job is to take care of you, to make sure you have the opportunities I didn't. That's enough for me." But that night, after Lucia had gone to bed, Rosa sat at their small kitchen table and took out Edward Blackwell's business card. She ran her finger over the embossed letters, thinking about his offer. One note, $10,000. It was ridiculous, of course. No one paid that much for a single note, unless it wasn't really about the note at all, unless it was about something else entirely. The next day at work, Rosa was mopping the hallway outside the principal's office when she overheard voices inside. She wouldn't have paid attention except she heard Edward Blackwell's name. "I still don't understand why he's so interested in our little school," Principal Reynolds was saying to someone. "Not that I'm complaining about the donation, but Blackwell could fund any arts program in the country. Why us?" "Apparently he's an alumnus," another voice replied. "Mr. Chen, the chemistry teacher, class of '82. Yes, but he hasn't shown any interest in the school before now. And then he shows up out of nowhere, offering a major donation and a benefit concert with industry connections. It's unusual. I heard he specifically asked about one of our staff members, Mr. Chen said. Rosa Diaz from the cleaning crew. Rosa froze, mop in hand. The janitor. What could he possibly want with her? There was a pause. I'm not sure, but my classroom is near the music room, and yesterday I heard piano music during lunch. When I looked in, Rosa was playing. And she was incredible. Rosa plays the piano? Principal Reynolds sounded shocked. Since when? I have no idea. But if Blackwell somehow found out about her talent, it might explain his interest. Rosa moved away quickly, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. Her heart was pounding. Mr. Chen had heard her playing during her secret practice session, and now he was telling the principal. By tomorrow, everyone in the school would know. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Playing the piano had always been her private joy, her secret escape. Now it was becoming public knowledge, subject to scrutiny and judgment. But beneath the discomfort, there was something else. A tiny spark of pride. Mr. Chen had called her playing incredible. He was surprised, impressed even. And suddenly Rosa found herself wondering, what if? What if she did play at the benefit concert? What if she accepted Edward's challenge? The thought terrified her. She wasn't a performer. She had no training, no experience in front of an audience. She would embarrass herself, but then again, $10,000. Not for her, but for the school's arts program. Money that could help restore the piano lessons that had been cut, that could provide instruments for students who couldn't afford them. By Friday morning, Rosa had made up her mind. Edward Blackwell was scheduled to return that afternoon for a meeting with the concert planning committee. She would find him and accept his challenge. One note for $10,000. Not the concert invitation, though. That was still too much. Word of Blackwell's return had spread through the school. Students whispered excitedly in the hallways, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous producer. Teachers seemed to stand a little straighter. Classrooms were extra tidy. Even Hector had the cleaning crew working double time to make sure everything was spotless. Rosa was emptying trash cans in the math wing when she heard the commotion. Voices, footsteps, the unmistakable buzz of excitement that meant someone important had arrived. She peered around the corner and saw Edward Blackwell walking down the hallway with Principal Reynolds and several teachers, heading toward the auditorium. Rosa waited until they had passed, then followed at a distance. She would wait outside the auditorium until their meeting was finished, then try to speak with Edward privately. But as she approached the auditorium doors, she heard her name. Has anyone seen Ms. Diaz today? Edward's voice carried clearly in the empty hallway. Rosa froze. Why was he asking for her? I believe she's working in the math wing this morning, Principal Reynolds replied. Would you like me to call her? No need to interrupt her work. I'll find her after our meeting. Rosa ducked behind a water fountain as the group entered the auditorium. Her heart was racing. He was looking for her, which meant she didn't need to seek him out. He would find her. The thought was both relieving and terrifying. She returned to her work, trying to focus on her tasks, but her mind was scattered. What would she say to him? How would she explain her decision? 2 hours later, Rosa was cleaning the girls' bathroom near the gym when the door opened and Lucia burst in, eyes wide with excitement. Mom, there you are. Everyone's looking for you. Rosa set down her cleaning spray. What, why? Mr. Blackwell is here and he's asking for you. They've made an announcement over the PA system twice. I've been in here. I didn't hear it. Rosa looked down at her uniform, stained from cleaning, her hair escaping from its bun. I can't meet him like this. It doesn't matter how you look, Lucia insisted, grabbing her hand. Come on, they're waiting in the auditorium. The whole school is there. The whole school? Rosa pulled back, alarm spreading through her. What do you mean? Mr. Blackwell called an impromptu assembly. He said he has a special announcement, but he needs you there first. Rosa shook her head. No. I was going to talk to him privately. I can't go in front of everyone. Mom. Lucia took both her hands, looking directly into her eyes. This is important. I don't know what's going on between you and Mr. Blackwell, but it could be big. Don't run from it. Rosa looked at her daughter, so confident, so sure. When had their roles reversed? When had Lucia become the one giving her courage? Okay, she said finally. But I need to wash my hands and fix my hair first. 5 minutes later, Rosa walked into the auditorium with Lucia at her side. The large room was packed with students, teachers, and staff. A buzz of conversation filled the air, but it quickly died down as people noticed her entrance. Edward Blackwell stood on the stage next to the grand piano, microphone in hand. He smiled when he saw her. "Ah, there she is," he said, his voice echoing through the speakers. "Ms. Rosa Diaz, would you please join me on stage?" Rosa felt hundreds of eyes turn to her. Her legs felt like lead as she slowly walked down the center aisle. Lucia gave her a gentle push toward the stage steps. "What's happening?" Rosa whispered as she approached Edward. "Our deal," he replied with a grin. "One note, $10,000. Remember?" Rosa's eyes widened. "Here now? In front of everyone?" Edward leaned in closer, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "I believe in public commitments, Rosa. It makes them harder to back out of later." He gestured to the piano. "One note. That's all I'm asking. For now." Rosa looked out at the sea of curious faces. She saw Lucia in the front row giving her a thumbs up. Hector and the other custodian stood at the back, looking confused but supportive. Mr. Chen nodded encouragingly from his seat with the other teachers. "I didn't agree to this," Rosa said, her voice shaking. "No," Edward acknowledged. "But sometimes the universe gives us a push when we're too afraid to jump on our own." He held out his hand. "One note, Rosa. What do you have to lose?" Rosa took a deep breath, then another. She could refuse, walk off the stage, go back to her cleaning cart and her normal life. Or she could sit down and play one note, just one, and help the school's arts program in the process. When she thought of it that way, there really was no choice at all. She nodded and sat down at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly as the auditorium fell completely silent. Her hands were trembling as she positioned them above the keys. One note, which one should she choose? Rosa closed her eyes, thinking of the first note she had ever learned, the beginning of every musical journey. Middle C. Simple, clear, the foundation from which all other music grew. She pressed the key and a single perfect tone rang out through the silent auditorium. The note hung in the air, crystal clear, then slowly faded away. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Edward began to applaud, and soon the entire auditorium joined in, the sound swelling until it was almost deafening. Edward approached the microphone, grinning widely. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce that Blackwell Music Group will be donating $10,000 to Westfield High's arts program in honor of Ms. Rosa Diaz." The applause grew even louder. Students were standing, cheering. Rosa sat frozen on the bench, overwhelmed by the reaction. Edward leaned down to speak in her ear. "Beautiful note, Rosa, very well chosen. But I think you can do better than that, don't you?" Rosa looked up at him, suddenly understanding what he was doing. This had never been about one note. It had been about getting her on stage in front of an audience, breaking through her fear. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she already knew. Edward's eyes twinkled as he spoke into the microphone again. "I wonder, would Ms. Diaz be willing to play something more for us today? Perhaps that Chopin piece she loves so much." The audience cheered in encouragement. Rosa saw Lucia's face shining with pride and excitement. She saw her colleagues looking at her with new respect and curiosity. "I haven't practiced," she whispered to Edward. "I'll make mistakes." "Of course you will," he replied quietly. "That's how we learn. That's how we grow." He held out his hand. "Well, Rosa, what do you say? One more piece for an additional donation to the arts program?" Rosa looked at the keys in front of her, then out at the expectant audience. Her hands were still shaking, but something else was rising within her, a feeling she had almost forgotten. Joy, excitement, the thrill of creating something beautiful. She nodded, positioned her hands, and began to play. 6 months had passed since the benefit concert, and Rosa's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. She stood in the wings of the Community Arts Center, watching as the audience filed in for tonight's performance. Her heart still raced before every show, but the paralyzing fear she'd felt that first day in the school auditorium had mellowed into a manageable flutter of excitement. 5 minutes. "Ms. Diaz," the stage manager whispered as he passed by. Rosa nodded, smoothing the front of her simple black dress, a far cry from her old blue custodian's uniform. She still couldn't believe this was her life now, Sometimes she would wake up in the middle of the night, certain it had all been a beautiful dream, only to find that reality had somehow become better than her most hopeful fantasies. After that first impromptu performance at Westfield High, things had moved quickly. Edward had convinced her to play at the benefit concert, where her rendition of Chopin's Nocturne had brought the audience to their feet. Someone had recorded it on their phone, and within days, the video had gone viral. Janitor mom stuns school with hidden piano talent. Millions of views, news stories, interview requests. Edward had guided her through the whirlwind, shielding her from the worst of the media frenzy, while helping her navigate the sudden attention. And then he had made her an offer that changed everything. A position at his music foundation, teaching piano to underprivileged children. A real salary, benefits, and time to continue developing her own skills with professional training. "You have a gift, Rosa," he had told her, "not just for playing, but for connecting with people through music. That's something that can't be taught." At first, she had hesitated. She knew how to clean a school, how to stretch a dollar, how to raise a child on her own. What did she know about teaching music? But Edward had been persistent. "Remember how you learned? From a neighbor who saw your passion and nurtured it? That's all these kids need. Someone who believes in them, who understands what it's like to have a dream that seems impossible." So she had taken the leap, trading her mop and cleaning cart for sheet music and piano benches. And to her surprise, she had thrived. Her students, mostly children from backgrounds similar to her own, responded to her patience, her lack of judgment, her understanding of their struggles. They played for her in ways they wouldn't play for their other teachers, opening up through music when words failed them. "Mom, you ready?" Rosa turned to see Lucia approaching, beautiful in a deep blue dress, her graduation tassel still attached to her purse, a reminder of her recent high school commencement ceremony. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rosa replied with a nervous smile. "You're going to be amazing," Lucia said, giving her mother a quick hug. "You always are." Rosa held her daughter tight, marveling at how much had changed between them. Discovering her mother's hidden talent had shifted something in their relationship. Lucia had seen a new dimension to the woman who had raised her. Not just the hard-working, self-sacrificing parent, but an artist with passion and dreams of her own. And Rosa had found a new kind of respect in her daughter's eyes. Not that Lucia had ever been ashamed of her mother's work as a janitor. She had always been proud of Rosa's work ethic and dedication. But now there was something else there too. Admiration for her courage, her willingness to take risks, to step into the spotlight despite her fears. "How's the view from your seat?" Rosa asked. "Perfect. Front row, just like you arranged. Edward's already there, saving spots for Mr. Chen and Principal Reynolds." Rosa nodded, gratitude washing over her. So many people had supported her journey. Edward with his belief in her talent, Mr. Chen with his recommendation for the Stanford scholarship that had helped Lucia, even Principal Reynolds, who had been shocked but ultimately encouraging of her new career path. "And you're sure you don't mind postponing Stanford until January?" Rosa asked for what must have been the 100th time. When the foundation job had come through, Lucia had made the decision to defer her enrollment for one semester, wanting to be present for her mother's transition and help get their new apartment set up. "Mom, we've been over this," Lucia said with an affectionate eye roll. "I'm exactly where I want to be. Besides, the research position they gave me at the hospital looks amazing on my resume. Dr. Patel already said I can continue working with her team during summer breaks." I know. Rosa smiled. "I just don't want you to sacrifice anything for me." "The way you sacrificed for me all these years?" Lucia raised an eyebrow. "Maybe I want to return the favor just a little bit." Before Rosa could respond, the stage manager appeared again. 2 minutes, Ms. Diaz. Students are in position. Thank you." Rosa took a deep breath as Lucia squeezed her hand once more before heading back to her seat in the audience. Tonight's performance was special. The first showcase featuring students from the Foundation's community music program, with Rosa as their teacher and mentor. 8 children from diverse backgrounds, aged 7 to 15, all with natural talent but limited access to formal training. For the past 5 months, she had worked with them 3 times a week, watching them grow not just as musicians but as confident young people who believed in their own potential. Rosa peeked through the curtain at the audience. The community center wasn't Carnegie Hall, but it was packed. Parents, siblings, friends, teachers, local music lovers. She spotted Edward in the front row, as Lucia had said, talking animatedly with Mr. Chen. Next to them was Hector and two other custodians from Westfield, dressed in their Sunday best, beaming with pride for their former colleague. The house lights dimmed, and Rosa moved to the center of the stage. The spotlight found her, and she blinked against its brightness. "Good evening," she began, her voice only slightly shaky. "Thank you all for coming to our first student showcase at the Blackwell Community Music Foundation. My name is Rosa Diaz, and it is my privilege to introduce you to 8 incredible young musicians who have worked extremely hard for this moment." She gestured toward the wings, and her students filed onto the stage, taking their positions at the keyboards that had been arranged in a semicircle. They looked nervous but determined, just as she had felt 6 months ago. "These children remind me every day why music matters," Rosa continued. "It's not just about playing the right notes or mastering difficult pieces. It's about finding your voice, discovering what you have to say to the world, and having the courage to say it, even when you're afraid." She looked directly at Lucia as she spoke the next words. "Sometimes in life we make choices that close certain doors. We set aside dreams for more practical concerns. We do what we must to survive, to provide for those we love, and there's dignity and beauty in that kind of sacrifice." Rosa paused, emotion threatening to overcome her. "But what I've learned, what these children have taught me, is that it's never too late to rediscover joy. Never too late to open the doors we thought were closed forever." She turned to her students, giving them an encouraging nod. "Tonight, these young artists will show you what they've learned. But more importantly, they'll show you who they are, their unique spirits expressed through music. Some pieces will be performed with technical perfection, others with a few mistakes, but all will be played with heart, and that's what matters most." Rosa moved to the grand piano positioned to the side of the stage. "We'll begin with a piece that has special meaning to me. The piece that changed my life when I played it at Westfield High 6 months ago. But this time I won't be playing alone." She nodded to Tanya, her youngest student, who slid onto the bench beside her. The 7-year-old's legs barely reached the pedals, but her determined expression mirrored Rosa's own. Together, they began to play a simplified duet arrangement of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Rosa carrying the complex melody, while Tanya played the basic chord progressions they had practiced for weeks. As they played, Rosa felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. From the frightened janitor who had been too scared to touch a piano in public, to a woman confidently sharing her gift with the next generation. From a mother who had buried her own dreams to give her daughter a chance, to a woman showing that same daughter that dreams could be resurrected, given new life. When the duet ended, the applause was warm and genuine. Rosa smiled at Tanya, who beamed back, her face glowing with pride. One by one, each student performed their piece, some classical, some contemporary, each selected to showcase their unique strengths and personalities. The final performance of the evening was a surprise, one that Rosa had arranged without telling anyone. As the last scheduled student took his bow, Rosa returned to the microphone. "We have one more special performance tonight," she announced. 6 months ago, my life changed when a man challenged me to play one note for $10,000. The audience laughed, and Edward gave a theatrical bow from his seat. That one note became a piece, which became a viral video, which somehow led to me standing here tonight. Rosa gestured toward the audience. But none of this would have been possible without the most important person in my life. My daughter, Lucia. In the front row, Lucia's eyes widened with surprise. Lucia has been my inspiration, my motivation, my reason for getting up each morning and working as hard as I could to give her opportunities I never had. What many of you don't know is that while supporting me through this crazy new chapter of my life, she's also become quite the pianist herself. Rosa extended her hand toward her daughter. "Lucia, will you join me for our finale?" The audience turned to look at Lucia, who sat frozen in shock. Edward leaned over to whisper something in her ear, and she finally stood, making her way to the stage on shaky legs. "Mom," she whispered as she reached Rosa. "I've only been playing for a few months. I can't perform in front of all these people." Rosa took her hands. "Remember what you told me that day in the auditorium? Don't run from it. Besides, we've been practicing this piece for weeks, and for fun, in our living room. And now we'll play it for friends. That's all this is. Sharing something we love with people who care about us. Lucia took a deep breath, then nodded. Together they sat at the grand piano and began to play a duet arrangement of Clair de Lune, the piece they had been working on during evening practice sessions in their apartment. It wasn't perfect. Lucia missed a few notes, and once they fell slightly out of sync. But the beauty of the music, and the obvious connection between mother and daughter as they played, moved many in the audience to tears. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. Rosa and Lucia stood holding hands as they took their bow. The students joined them on stage for a final ensemble bow, their faces shining with excitement. As roses were presented and photos taken, Rosa found herself looking out at the audience, at the community that had formed around this new chapter of her life. Edward, whose belief in her had started it all, her former co-workers cheering her on, her students' families, grateful for the gift of music she was sharing with their children. Later that night, as she and Lucia walked home under a starlit sky, Rosa felt a sense of peace she had never known before. "You know what I was thinking about during the performance?" Lucia asked. "What?" "That day when Mr. Blackwell first came to school. If you hadn't been cleaning the auditorium at that exact moment, if you hadn't heard him playing Chopin, if you hadn't mentioned that you liked classical music, none of this would have happened." Rosa nodded thoughtfully. "Life is strange that way. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest moments. Do you ever miss it? Your old life?" Rosa considered the question carefully. "I miss the simplicity sometimes, knowing exactly what needed to be done each day. But no, I don't miss the life where I had to hide parts of myself, where I thought certain dreams weren't for people like me." She squeezed her daughter's hand. "Besides, I didn't lose my old life, I just added to it. I'm still the same Rosa who raised you, who worked hard, who did what needed to be done. I've just found a way to be more of myself than I thought possible." Lucia smiled. "Play one note and I'll donate $10,000, she mimicked Edward's voice. Who knew one note could change so much? "It wasn't really about the note," Rosa said softly. "It was about being brave enough to sit at the piano in the first place." As they reached their apartment building, Rosa looked up at the stars once more. One note, one moment of courage. Sometimes that was all it took to open a door to a whole new life. Not just for herself, but for all the students who would pass through the Foundation's program in the years to come. Children who, like her, just needed someone to see their potential and give them a chance to play their own note in their own way for the world to hear.